You know, a lot's been said about JamesOn Curry, who had the shortest NBA career of all time, but there's some heartbreaking details that a lot of people miss. And it's maybe the most inspiring NBA story I've ever heard. I mean, at one point, he was the best high school player in Michael Jordan's home state. But 3 months before graduation, he was arrested for selling weed. And I know that marijuana is legal in a bunch of states now, but actually, I think dealing drugs is like really serious, no matter what drug it is. And so did North Carolina, because UNC took that scholarship back and he went to Oklahoma State instead. But JamesOn made the most of his second chance, and he led OSU to a conference championship and to a run in March Madness. However, his coach begged him not to jump to the NBA, not selfishly because he thought JamesOn wasn't ready. At the time, though, he wanted to support his family, and the Bulls had promised to draft him. So, in 2007, he became a second-round pick, and he was off to the D-League, which we now call the G-League, for all you young folks. This was his chance to prove how good he was, and he could still be a gifted offensive point guard, but he was arrested. Again, this time for being drunk and urinating in public. Then he ran from the cop. The Bulls decided to give him a third chance after that, but then JamesOn missed a team flight out of Chicago. How does that happen? If you're the best player in the NBA, you could get a fourth chance, but not if you're a D-League player. So JamesOn had to play in Europe for a while before he somehow got another chance. And luckily, not only did a D-League team give him that chance, but the Clippers actually called him up to the NBA in 2010. This was his dream. Finally, somehow he went from ruining his potential to an NBA locker room. And he was called in to the game with 3.9 seconds left to go in the third quarter. The Celtics had the ball. JamesOn was guarding Rajon Rondo. Ray Allen didn't get his shot off, and JamesOn's career was over. In fact, he didn't know it yet, but the Clippers were about to cut him 12 hours later, and somehow things got even worse than that, a lot worse. He bounced around from the D-League to Europe, never being able to shake that bad reputation. But honestly, as you look at his story, the truth is, he was still a really troubled dude, and NBA teams were right. After a bad ankle injury in 2014, he was back in Oklahoma driving near a university at 1 a.m., and he was pulled over with more weed and a handgun. JamesOn then gave the cop a fake name, and he was charged with intent to sell drugs on campus and false impersonation. Before that case even gets settled, he is arrested again for possession of a hard drug this time. So yeah, he was still a drug dealer. He even admits it now. JamesOn was like super lost, and he thought the police in Oklahoma were the problem. So, even with a girlfriend and 3 kids, he bailed out of Oklahoma to the state it all began in, North Carolina. He was with his family at that time, trying to make a comeback, and after a late night workout, his life changed again for the worse. JamesOn was driving on the freeway when he dropped his phone, and before he could snag it, his truck flipped multiple times at high speed. He dislocated ribs, he broke his back, and he had blood pouring out of his head. Doctors had to put 2 metal rods in his back to support his spine. The scars are still there, big, giant, jagged scars. So obviously the NBA dream was over, officially. JamesOn says though that was the wake-up call to change and finally move on with his life. He wanted to support his family, but he couldn't with so many felonies. He looked for a job everywhere. He finally got one as a truck driver working 12-hour days only because the owner was a fan of his from college. Things couldn't get any worse until one question from a coworker saved his life. "Could you fill in for my kid's YMCA basketball team?" He said, "Yeah, I can, but I've never coached before." So he did, but believe me, he did the best job he could, which wasn't good at all because he had never coached and the team sucked, but he was great with the kids. Later, someone asked him for one-on-one coaching for their kid. He tried that. Pretty soon, parents from other teams were asking for private coaching. He was then able to make enough money from that to quit the truck driving business and start his own coaching business. Within 1 year, business was booming, and JamesOn not only had a bunch of kids he was coaching, but he started a basketball camp at a local high school. And according to the census in that small Oklahoma town, JamesOn's family are the only black people in the entire town. Most of his clients' parents are super conservative politically, but they don't care about JamesOn's past because of how good he is with their kids. In fact, a reporter asked a grandma if it was a problem that a multiple-time felon with tats up and down was coaching her grandkids. She said no, because people make mistakes. Now, JamesOn is married to that girlfriend, and his kids are almost in high school. People in that town love him, and they're really protective when people try to clown on him for his 4-second NBA career. The school principal even said he played an NBA game. How many people in the world could say that? He should take a lot of pride in that, and he overcame a lot to get there. And really, I think the craziest part of this whole thing is JamesOn says even if an NBA team called him right now, he wouldn't answer the phone. Would playing in the NBA give me peace of mind? No. Would I be rich as hell? Yeah. Maybe I could outshoot 80% of the guards in the NBA right this second, but would I personally be happy every single day? This is where I want to be. So yeah, people still make jokes about the guy with the shortest NBA career ever, but the good news is he is over it. And even though the NBA didn't give him some rich, glamorous life in a big city, basketball still saved his life in the end. But there's a story about another guy down on his luck who washed out of the league early, who's turned his life around. However, one thing that hurt this guy's feelings was that Shaq lied about him.